Don't you hate it when you underestimate how much something will cost, and then you're left scrambling to fix your budget? Maybe you went to the grocery store without a detailed list, first mistake, and thought you would only spend $100. Then you get to the checkout, and the cashier says, "That will be $205.39, please." Well, maybe the prices went up. Or maybe you grabbed just a few extra things as you went through the store. After all, there are so many things screaming for your attention. Coupons, beautiful end displays, sales. I've been there with money. And I've been there with time. Underestimating how long projects will take, committing to more than I could handle, blindly agreeing to deadlines and finding myself overloaded, running out of time, having to sacrifice sleep to keep my promises. I'm so glad I found a better way. Now, instead of pretending I'm Superwoman and saying yes to everything everybody wants, I create a time budget before the new quarter begins. I actually use 4-month semesters or seasons to plan my time, but to keep it simple, we're going to talk about 3-month quarters like the business world does. In a previous video, I showed how to figure out how many work days you have in the next quarter after blocking off time for large commitments, such as trips, conferences, and long meetings. Now I want to talk about how you can decide how many work hours you have for projects in the next quarter. So let's look at 4 steps to deciding how many hours you will devote to your projects in the next quarter. The first step is to set a daily limit. So in previous videos, we've talked about setting a limit of the number of hours you're going to work each day. There's no prize for being a workaholic. All you get is stress, poor health, and failed relationships. So we need to be realistic and reasonable when we set a daily work limit. 8 hours is typical, but it's not universal. For example, nurses often work 12-hour shifts for 3 days and then get some time off. But since our videos are mainly designed for people who do a fair bit of office work and have some control over their schedule, we'll just talk about maybe an 8-hour day as being the model. Now, depending on your season of life, you may be able to work a little more than 8 hours a day if it doesn't harm your life balance or relationships. And there may be times when you have an intense project where you have to give it more time than you would. And that's fine as long as you balance things out later. But also there are some seasons where you may need to work fewer than 8 hours a day. For example, you might have young children to care for. You might be looking after elderly parents. There may be some other reason why you need to work less. Perhaps you're doing a lot of travel and that's very tiring and you need time to recuperate afterwards. So whatever your season is for the next quarter, think it through and set a daily limit for the number of hours you plan to work each day. Now, of course, we know life is not always predictable, and there are going to be those days where things turn out differently than we planned. Maybe we weren't feeling so well, or we were tired and we just couldn't work as many hours as we wanted. Or maybe there's a day when you're trying to get something finished. You don't want to leave it half done, so you decide to work a little longer. We're all going to have odd days, but if we can try to stick to our regular schedule as much as possible, and when we do have these days that are a little different, we could swing back into our regular schedule afterward. It really helps to have consistency, and that will keep us moving forward towards our goals. So what do you think is a reasonable limit for your daily work hours? Is it 8, 7, 9, 6? It depends on you, your schedule, your work, and your season of life. So that's the first step. Set a daily limit for the number of hours you plan to work. The second step is to design your day. So now that you have that number in mind, the daily work hours limit, you can design your day around that. And probably the best way to do this is to reverse engineer it. So let's start at the end of the day. When do you want to finish work for the day? So think about commitments that you have in the late afternoon or evening on some days of the week. If you can choose a cutoff time for work that you can respect every work day, that's going to really help because consistency is very, very effective. So let's say you have to be somewhere at 6:30 on Wednesdays. You wouldn't want to plan to work until 6 o'clock every day because you would have to change up your routine that day so you wouldn't have that consistency. So you might want to think about ending at 5 or 5:30 every day. Next, you should decide how long you plan to break for lunch. So there are some different factors to consider here. Do you ever have meetings at lunch? How long do they last? Do you need to run errands at lunchtime? Or could you reschedule those for a different time for the weekend or evening so that you could protect your work time? Do you like to get some exercise at lunchtime? Maybe go for a walk or go to the gym? Also, do you eat a prepared lunch or do you cook it or do you go out to eat? All of these things are going to be factors in deciding how long you need to take for your lunch break. Again, consistency is key. I just find the more things we can put on autopilot, the more we can devote our brain energy to the important things. So keeping in mind the time that you want to finish work and how long you plan to take for your lunch break, you can then work backwards to figure out what time you need to start work. So if your daily limit that you decided on is 8 hours of work each day and you want to end at 5 o'clock p.m. and take 1 hour for lunch, then you'd have to start work at 8 o'clock a.m. Now notice we set a daily limit. We didn't say that you had to work that much. So if you find ways to be more effective and finish your work early, that's even better. But at least you're going to have a cutoff time. And you're going to have your day designed after a pattern that you can follow each day for consistency. The third step is to decide on your project hours. So let's say you decided your work limit is 8 hours a day. Not all of those hours are available for projects. You are going to need to keep some time in reserve for administrative work, trivial things we might call them, unexpected things that come up. You see, every role that we're connected to requires some time for maintaining that role. There are things like emails, calls, paperwork, reports. So you can't spend your entire day just on projects. What you have to do is decide how many focused hours you can assign each day for your projects that you need to concentrate on. When I first started time budgeting, I tried to budget all 8 hours of the day, and that was a disaster. Now I use 6 hours a day, but it's not easy. It requires me to be very vigilant about what I do. I have to be very intentional if I want to get those 6 hours of project work a day. And I've been working up to this over a period of years. So you might want to start with maybe 3 or 4 hours a day for projects. One thing you want to consider is, when is your energy the highest? Morning or afternoon? Many people can't focus on a project for more than 3 hours. And even then, it's probably best if they do that at their highest energy level. So for me, that's the mornings. If I can start a project first thing and just focus on it and kind of block everything else out, not be interrupted, then that's most effective for me. So find out what works for you. If you can set aside a whole block of time for projects that's not broken up or interrupted, that can be really effective because you don't have to regain your train of thought after being pulled away from the project. So do you think you could do a 3-hour project block in the morning? Will you do another block in the afternoon, maybe 1, 2, or 3 hours? That would give you a total of 4 to 6 project hours daily. Or you might want to think about doing a 2-hour project block in the morning and another in the afternoon. That would give you 4 hours a day. So in this third step, you're deciding on the number of hours you're going to devote to focused projects in a given day. The final step is to figure out your quarterly project hours. So now that you have those two numbers, your daily limit of working hours and the number of project hours in a day, you can figure out your quarterly work hours. We are talking about the number of hours available in that quarter for projects, for things that require deep focus. The routine work and the small tasks, those are going to fall into the rest of your work day. So now you are going to need the information about how many full work days are available in the quarter that you have previously prepared. So in a previous video, we talked about how to do that, and it's called Identify Quarterly Work Days. So after that video, you will have written down how many full work days you have available in the quarter. And so that will be itemized by how many you have each week in that quarter. So now all you have to do is multiply that by the number of project hours you decided you would have per day. So let's say in a given week you had 3 full days and you've decided you can do 4 project hours per day. That would give you 12 project hours that week. Let's say in the quarter you had 80 full days, and at 4 project hours a day, that would give you 320 project hours. So that's going to help you see what projects you can plan for the coming quarter. And in the next video, we're going to talk about how to plan those projects based on this information. If you follow this time budgeting plan for your quarter, it will help you avoid overcommitting. You'll be motivated, you'll be moving towards your goals, but you will also be realistic. So in this video, we've looked at 4 steps to deciding how many hours you will devote to projects in the next quarter. The first was to set a daily limit for the number of hours you're going to work each day. The second was to design your day. What time will you start? How long will you break for lunch? What time will you end? The third step was to decide your project hours. How much time can you devote each day to focused work on projects? And then finally, figuring your quarterly project hours, the total that you will have this quarter to work on projects. So I have a question for you. How many project hours are you going to plan for each workday? Feel free to comment below. How many project hours are you going to plan for each workday? Be sure to get your free quarterly time budget by clicking the link below in the comments. And stay tuned for more videos in this series about quarterly time budgeting.